The transport doors close. The noise from the outside world fades. A new arrival takes a final step into a place officially designed for people the federal government considers the highest security risk in the country. The walls are quiet, controlled, and built for one purpose: separation. Inside the U.S. Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility in Florence, Colorado, known as ADX Florence, the first day is carefully planned, tightly supervised, and deeply structured. What exactly happens in those first hours? And how does the system introduce someone to the most secure federal prison in America? This documentary examines what is known from official accounts, court records, investigative journalism, former staff interviews, and government reports about a person's first day inside ADX Florence. It explains how the intake process works, what new arrivals encounter, and how the prison's design shapes behavior and routine. Everything you will hear is based on real, verified events and public documentation. This is an educational and historical exploration intended to inform, not to sensationalize or glorify crime. This documentary is for educational and informational purposes only. All content is based on factual, research-driven information from public records, official documents, court filings, and reporting by reputable media and human rights organizations. No information is intentionally fabricated or exaggerated. Before we proceed, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The journey to ADX Florence does not begin at its gates. It usually starts in a different federal prison or detention center, after a classification process determines that a person will be transferred to the administrative maximum facility. Reasons can include escape attempts, serious security concerns, or involvement in acts that require the highest level of control under federal guidelines. Transport to ADX is handled under strict federal procedures. Movements are planned, scheduled, and documented. New arrivals do not see the full complex. They are guided through controlled corridors designed to limit contact and movement. The first official step inside is the receiving and discharge area, commonly called R&D. Here, identity is confirmed. Paperwork is checked against federal records. Property is inventoried. Rules are explained in clear terms. The tone is procedural, not emotional. Every part of the process is supervised and recorded. Medical and psychological screenings are part of intake, reflecting federal requirements to evaluate a person's health and immediate mental state. Staff assess whether there are risks of self-harm or acute distress. The goal is not comfort, but safety and documentation. Orientation follows. New arrivals are informed about daily schedules, expectations for behavior, communication procedures, legal mail, and monitoring policies. The step-down program that can eventually lead to lower security levels. Prisoners do not enter a shared dorm. At ADX, the design centers on individual housing. Cells are built to minimize contact between people and to allow staff to control movement from central stations. These features have been documented in federal reports and civil cases reviewing prison conditions. On the first day, a person experiences the core reality of ADX. Almost all daily life occurs in one secure cell. Meals, reading, thinking, and most hours of the day happen in that small space. Recreation exists, but it is also controlled, scheduled, and separated. Former wardens and staff have described ADX as a facility for those who must be managed with the highest degree of control. That philosophy is visible immediately. Communication is monitored. Movement is rare. Independence is minimal. The environment is structured around predictability and prevention. For many new arrivals, the most powerful moment of the first day is not loud or dramatic. It is the quiet after the door closes. The routines of the outside world are gone. The routines of ADX begin. And that first night raises a question that every resident must answer over time. How does a person adapt to a place intentionally designed for near-total control and isolation? The first night inside ADX Florence is shaped by routine. Lights are controlled, checks are scheduled, and movement follows procedures that have been refined over years of federal policy. This is not a chaotic environment. It is a planned one. Every new arrival is placed under close observation at first. Staff ensure that the person is accounted for, that they understand the basic rules, and that there are no immediate medical or psychological emergencies. The emphasis is on stability and control, not comfort. Cells at ADX are designed to be self-contained. A person's daily life centers around a sleeping area, a fixed desk, a toilet, and sink unit, secured doors, and narrow openings. Contact with others is limited. Sound carries differently in concrete spaces, often creating an environment where people are physically close but socially distant. That separation is intentional and built into the facility's design. It reflects the prison's mission to manage people who are considered the most difficult to securely house in the federal system. The first morning is usually the point when the new routine becomes real. Meals arrive on schedule. Counts take place. Doors do not open freely. A structured level of predictability replaces the uncertainty of transport and intake. Communication with the outside world exists, but under strict regulation. Legal mail follows federal rules. Phone calls are monitored and limited. Visits, when approved, take place under highly controlled conditions. New arrivals are informed that every contact is subject to review for security reasons. Recreation is also different from most prisons. Instead of large communal yards, movement is restricted and supervised. Early on, new arrivals learn that time outside the cell is scheduled, brief, and controlled. Even during these periods, interaction with others is limited or non-existent, depending on the individual's placement level. Inside the cell, time feels slower. Without access to open movement or group activity, individuals turn to reading, writing, or quiet reflection. For many, the greatest adjustment is not physical confinement, but social isolation. It requires developing strategies to cope with long periods of structured solitude. Staff members at ADX are trained specifically for this environment. Their work emphasizes procedure, safety, and consistency. The relationship between staff and incarcerated people is guided by policy rather than personal interaction. Instructions are formal. Conversations are brief. Expectations are clear. During these first 24 hours, one message becomes unmistakable. This is a facility built on rules. Movement is a privilege. Progress is gradual. Every step is documented. Yet a larger question remains for every new arrival, and it rarely has an immediate answer. What path will they take inside a system designed to be both secure and highly controlled? And how will the structure of ADX shape their behavior in the days that follow? After the first night, the next stage is orientation to the daily structure. ADX Florence is often described in court records and federal reports as program-driven. That means almost everything that happens is part of a designed schedule, with clear expectations and measurable behavior. The first full day reinforces that reality. A new arrival learns how movement is requested, how doors are operated remotely by staff, and how every transition, from meals to limited recreation, is controlled through multiple layers of security. These are not hidden systems. They are explained as part of policy, emphasizing predictability and safety inside a high-security environment. Rules are presented in writing and often reviewed again through staff instruction. They cover, when counts occur, how to request medical or mental health services, how disciplinary procedures work, what is allowed in the cell, what privileges can be earned over time. Privileges matter at ADX because the facility includes a step-down process. This program, documented in federal policy and litigation records, allows some individuals to gradually move toward lower levels of restriction if they meet behavioral standards. On the second or third day, new arrivals are told that progress is possible, but it depends on consistent compliance with rules over long periods of time. For some, this creates a sense of direction. For others, the distance between the present and any change feels large. Both reactions are common and have been noted by mental health professionals who have studied high-security confinement. Orientation also introduces the library system, educational materials, and limited programming. Access is controlled and often happens through delivery rather than group classes. The focus remains on separation rather than group interaction, reflecting the core mission of the facility. Inside the cell, new arrivals begin organizing their space. Personal items are minimal and regulated. Legal papers, books, and a small number of permitted belongings become important. In this setting, routine becomes a psychological tool. Many people structure their days around reading, writing letters, or simple exercise that can be done in a confined area. The design of ADX influences behavior as strongly as the rules do. Lighting, schedules, and the absence of regular social interaction shape how time feels. Days can seem long but highly predictable. That predictability is intentional. It reduces uncertainty while keeping control at the center of daily life. Mental health staff and medical professionals are part of the institution's operation. Evaluations, rounds, and documented contacts exist because federal law requires attention to the well-being of those in custody. These systems are not perfect and have been the subject of lawsuits and reform efforts, but they form a consistent part of intake and orientation. As the first week begins, a new arrival usually understands the essential reality of ADX Florence. Progress is slow, communication is monitored, and life is lived within carefully defined limits. The facility is not temporary for many of the people housed there. It is designed for long-term management of individuals classified as the highest security risk. With this realization comes the next challenge: how to live within a system built on isolation while maintaining a sense of identity, routine, and future direction. How does a person adjust once the orientation is over, the rules are known, and the long-term reality of life inside America's most secure federal prison fully sets in? Once the rules are understood and orientation is complete, the experience of ADX Florence becomes less about learning procedures and more about adapting to isolation. This stage is not marked by a single moment. It develops gradually, often during the first week, when the routine becomes familiar. The physical environment is central. ADX is known for a design that prioritizes control through architecture. Doors are remotely operated. Movement routes are segmented. Lines of sight are limited. These features are described in federal planning documents and have been examined in court cases reviewing prison conditions. They exist to prevent unauthorized movement and to protect both staff and incarcerated people. Daily life revolves around structure. Counts occur at predictable times. Meals follow a schedule. Recreation is requested and supervised. Each activity is separated from the next by security steps that remain consistent day after day. Isolation at ADX is not complete sensory deprivation. People can read, write, listen, and think, but social contact is limited. Conversations between cells are often difficult and restricted by distance and design. Face-to-face interaction is rare and typically occurs through barriers, under observation, and for specific purposes such as legal visits or medical treatment. Researchers and human rights observers have noted that long-term isolation can influence thinking patterns, mood, and perception of time. For that reason, mental health monitoring is built into the institution. Staff conduct rounds, review requests, and assess risks of self-harm. Policies have changed over the years in response to lawsuits and public scrutiny, with increased attention to mental health needs. For some individuals, isolation leads to increased focus on reading, legal work, or personal reflection. For others, it produces frustration, restlessness, or withdrawal. These responses are not uniform. They depend on personality, past experiences, mental health history, and the length of confinement. What is consistent is that the environment itself, for better or worse, shapes behavior. Letters become important. Communication with family, when permitted, is carefully regulated but meaningful. Mail is screened according to federal rules. Phone calls are limited and monitored. Visits take place under controlled conditions, often through secure partitions. Even these contacts emphasize that ADX is built on separation rather than physical connection. The step-down program remains central. Individuals are reminded that compliant behavior over time can lead to reduced restrictions and potential transfer to other facilities. This program is structured in phases and has been described in Bureau of Prisons documentation. It is intended both as an incentive and as a management strategy, providing a path forward within an otherwise highly restrictive environment. At this stage, some people begin to measure time not in days, but in milestones, completing a phase, gaining a small privilege, receiving a book, earning a slight change in routine. Progress is incremental and closely monitored. For staff members, working in such an environment requires sustained attention and adherence to policy. Training focuses on de-escalation, procedure, and communication inside a high-security facility. The relationship between staff and incarcerated people is professional and rule-driven, with safety as the overriding priority. Over the first weeks, the question shifts from "what is this place?" to "how do I live here over time?" That adjustment is one of the most significant psychological challenges associated with the first period inside ADX Florence. The system is designed to be stable. The individual must now decide how to function within that stability, how to use time, how to cope with limited contact, and how to respond to an environment built around control. The next turning point comes when the short-term shock of arrival fades and long-term reality replaces it. Routine is established. Choices, though limited, begin to matter. And the future is measured less by days and more by policy, behavior, and the structure of the federal prison system itself. What happens when the initial adjustment ends and long-term confinement becomes the new normal inside America's most secure federal prison? After the initial weeks, something subtle but significant happens for many people inside ADX Florence. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. What once felt overwhelming turns into routine. The system is designed for this outcome. Predictability is a management tool. Days begin to follow the same sequence. Wake-up checks, meals, counts, controlled movement, scheduled recreation, and long periods inside the cell. With time, most surprises disappear. The rules are known. The schedule rarely changes. The environment remains constant. This stage is where long-term adjustment begins. Many individuals develop personal systems to structure time. Some divide the day into fixed blocks: exercise, reading, writing, legal preparation, or quiet reflection. Others focus on religious study, educational material, or correspondence. These personal routines exist within the larger institutional routine and help maintain direction in a highly controlled environment. The importance of small privileges increases. Access to books, additional commissary items, or limited program opportunities may appear minor from the outside, but inside ADX, they represent progress and autonomy. They are linked directly to behavior and compliance with institutional rules. This is part of the facility's design. Incentives encourage stability and reduce incidents. The step-down program becomes the central long-term focus. Participation is reviewed, documented, and evaluated over extended periods. Advancement can mean slightly more out-of-cell time, different housing units with marginally increased privileges, and, eventually for some, transfer to a less restrictive federal facility. There is no guarantee, but the possibility itself is important. It gives structure to long sentences in a highly restrictive system. During this period, individuals also interact more regularly with prison systems beyond basic custody. Case managers, psychologists, and mental health staff, medical services, administrative review processes each operates within federal legal standards and oversight mechanisms. Their work emphasizes documentation, assessment, and risk management. For the incarcerated person, these interactions are often brief and formal, but they represent key links to program participation and future status. The environment continues to influence thinking and behavior. Long periods with limited social contact can heighten self-awareness or, at times, lead to withdrawal and lethargy. Monitoring for mental health concerns is therefore an ongoing responsibility for the institution, not just an intake procedure. Over the last decade, policies and practices at ADX have been the subject of legal challenges and review, leading to reforms intended to strengthen mental health evaluation and care. Outside contact remains regulated but meaningful. Letters and approved phone calls help maintain family ties. Legal visits connect individuals to the court system. These connections reinforce that life continues beyond the prison's walls, even when daily experience is confined to a small physical space. Work opportunities inside ADX are extremely limited compared with lower security facilities due to its mission and design. Instead, progress is measured by behavior, compliance, and participation in available programs. Staff emphasize consistency, fewer infractions, steady engagement, and adherence to rules over time. At this point, many individuals realize that long-term life at ADX is not defined by single dramatic events, but by accumulation of days. Stability is the norm. Change is gradual. The system is built to prevent disruption and to manage risk through structure. And so a new question emerges, perhaps the most difficult of all. When routine becomes permanent and the outside world feels distant, how does a person continue to plan for a future beyond extreme security? And what role does the step-down process play in shaping that possibility? As months pass inside ADX Florence, attention naturally shifts toward the only structured pathway forward, the step-down program. This program is not a promise, and it is not automatic. It is a gradual, monitored process developed by the Federal Bureau of Prisons to reduce restrictions for people who consistently follow rules and demonstrate stability. Case managers explain the phases in formal reviews. Each phase brings limited changes, slightly more time out of the cell, controlled opportunities for communication, or transfer to different units within the same facility. Every change is reviewed through paperwork, observations, and staff reports. Progress is reevaluated regularly and can be slowed or reversed if rules are broken. The step-down system reflects a core principle of modern correctional policy. Behavior inside prison influences future conditions. It is designed to balance security with incentives, allowing individuals to work toward environments with more interaction and fewer restrictions while still maintaining safety. With that possibility comes another reality: the weight of time. Many people at ADX are serving long sentences. Time is not measured in days or weeks, but in years. The environment requires patience, routine, and self-management. This is where psychological adaptation becomes central. Some individuals respond by building strong internal structures: daily exercise, disciplined reading habits, writing projects, or religious practice. Others experience periods of frustration or hopelessness. Mental health professionals have documented both outcomes in high-security isolation settings. ADX incorporates periodic evaluations and therapy options, though access and effectiveness have been the subject of legal scrutiny and reform efforts. The facility itself is intentionally quiet and controlled. That quiet can help prevent conflicts, but it can also make time feel slower. Individuals may focus intensely on small events: letters arriving, reviews scheduled, privileges granted or denied. These moments take on meaning because they mark change inside an otherwise stable routine. Another layer of life at ADX involves legal status and appeals. Many individuals continue to work on court filings, often spending hours reading case law and preparing documents. Law library access is controlled but present, often through electronic or request-based systems rather than group spaces. Legal work becomes both a practical effort and a way to direct attention toward the future. Family connections, when present, play a significant role in motivation. Even brief monitored phone calls or carefully screened letters can provide emotional grounding. Distance is a challenge. ADX is located in rural Colorado, making travel difficult for many families. Visits are tightly controlled, emphasizing safety while still acknowledging the importance of outside relationships. Staff members, too, live with the weight of time. Working in a high-security facility requires consistency and vigilance every day. Procedures are repeated without variation. Training emphasizes professionalism, documentation, and measured responses. The system relies on predictability from both staff and incarcerated people. As years pass, the central question becomes clearer. ADX Florence is designed to control risk, prevent escape, and manage individuals the federal system considers its highest security concern. Within that structure, the step-down program offers direction, but progress is slow and closely monitored. People must learn to live with long-term structure, limited social contact, and gradual change. The next stage is not about the first day or even the first year. It is about endurance, how individuals, staff, and the system itself function over long periods inside an institution built around maximum security and separation. The unanswered question that remains is this: how does long-term confinement at the highest security level shape identity, behavior, and future outcomes for both the individuals housed there and the larger correctional system that manages them? By the time someone has lived months or years inside ADX Florence, the story is no longer only about the individual. It is also about what the institution itself represents in the broader U.S. correctional system. ADX was created in the 1990s after incidents in other prisons raised questions about how to safely confine individuals who posed exceptional security risks. The goal was prevention, preventing escapes, preventing violence inside prisons, and preventing coordination of serious crimes from behind bars. Its design, policies, and routines were built around that purpose. Over time, courts, watchdog organizations, journalists, former staff, and policymakers have examined life inside this facility. Their reviews have led to changes, including greater attention to mental health screening, clearer criteria for placement, and structured pathways out of the most restrictive units. This reflects a constant tension in correctional policy: how to balance safety, human rights, and long-term outcomes. Psychological and system analysis. Psychologists studying high-security confinement highlight several consistent themes. First, structure strongly influences behavior. Predictable schedules, clear rules, and controlled movement can reduce incidents of violence and disorder. In that sense, ADX functions as designed, a place where control is prioritized and unpredictability is minimized. Second, isolation has measurable psychological effects. Extended separation from others can lead some individuals to experience anxiety, sleep disruption, difficulty concentrating, or changes in mood. Not everyone responds the same way, but the risk is well documented. This is why mental health evaluations, therapy options, and policy reforms have become central parts of the ADX conversation. Third, incentives matter. The step-down program demonstrates a fundamental principle. When people see a clear connection between behavior and conditions, they are more likely to engage with rules and programs. Even small privileges can motivate positive adjustment when living in a highly controlled environment. From a systems perspective, ADX Florence raises important questions. How much isolation is necessary for safety? How should mental health be protected in extreme security settings? How can society ensure both accountability and humane treatment? What outcomes, behavioral, legal, and social, result from long periods in such facilities? These are policy questions, not just personal ones. They continue to shape debates in courts, legislatures, and academic research. Meanwhile, daily life inside ADX continues much as it began, through routine, documentation, and strict control. The first day becomes the first year. The intake process becomes long-term adjustment. For those inside, time is measured by reviews, letters, and gradual change. For the system, ADX remains a symbol of its highest level of custody, used rarely, justified through security concerns, and closely watched by the public and the courts. The first day inside ADX Florence is not defined by noise or spectacle. It is defined by procedure, structure, and the beginning of life in one of the most controlled environments in the world. Each stage, the arrival, orientation, isolation, routine, and step-down program, reflects the same core idea: maximum security through design and regulation. This story is not about glorifying crime or punishment. It is about understanding a system created to manage extreme risk and recognizing the human, legal, and ethical questions that come with it. ADX Florence shows how architecture, policy, and psychology intersect inside modern corrections, and how powerful the experience of control and isolation can be. As discussions continue about prison reform, mental health, and public safety, the reality of places like ADX remains central. They remind us that every decision about incarceration carries long-term consequences for individuals, families, staff, and society as a whole. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative and would like to see more evidence-based explorations of real events and institutions, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your thoughts in the comments.